one thing. Look, do I think cap and trade had the right intent? Absolutely. Do I think it was right for New York? Probably not. But maybe you make that kind of effort if the economy's good. But when the economy's bad, is that when you want to do that? Now, we need to fix healthcare. But think about this. It's 1/6 of our economy. 1/6 of our national economy is based on healthcare. We got to do this thing right.
That's one of the also debates the different kinds of people that are on Capitol Hill. There's people like the Democrats would be like Keynesians, and they would say, well, the economy's bad, so we put money into it now. We try to put safeguards in so people don't abuse it, and then if some of our programs don't work, we cut back and worry about reducing the debt at a time when people are spending money, when our tax revenues are up. And Republicans would say, no, you cut back now. And Democrats would say, well, the economy would continue to shrink. So where do you come in on that end? I mean, you voted for the stimulus bill. Right. And a lot of times what we're seeing in the county, we've been doing this thing called tracking the stimulus, right? And it's just replacing other money that would normally be there. People aren't balancing their budgets and then adding stimulus money. It's just replacing money. So where do you come across? Is now a good time to spend money for the government, or should they wait? And
well, that's a great question. And here's the thing that a lot of the money is substitute money from the stimulus. It's substitute money, for instance, and I'll talk about this because I'm on the transportation committee. It's money for transportation infrastructure that the state of New York doesn't have to spend, and not just the state of New York, but the state of California. So if the federal government didn't come in and put it in, it would not be getting done. So the roads that we're seeing paved right now by the state of New York would not be paved right now because the state of New York did not have the money. So in fact, I hear that from contractors. They say, oh, you know, we need to push the state to put their share in. Well, the state doesn't have it to put it in. I mean, you can't get, you know, blood from a stone. So I'm saying a lot of this money that we put in the schools, if we didn't give a large money, this part of the stimulus plan went toward what they call Title I in the schools and also the IDEA reimbursement. If we didn't put that in, the schools were going to start to lay teachers off. The schools were going to start to pass those added amounts of money into the localities and raise local taxes. So I would submit that while the stimulus plan not only created jobs, but it also supplanted money that wasn't going to get spent.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then why did they vote to take out, what was it, like $75 billion of extra state funding? So the idea was we can help the states balance their budget by sending the money, but then it got over close to the $1 trillion price tag, and Congress said, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, what you're saying, it sounds like it makes sense.
Well, you know, and that was a huge debate we had. Was the stimulus plan big enough, or was it too big? I mean, you know, we went back and forth. I mean, that's the kind of discussion that goes back and forth. And ultimately, the president said, hey, look, I can't get anything bigger than what I have through the Senate. And so, you know, we're bicameral, so we have to get it through two houses. So we had passed the bill in the House that was larger. The Senate came back, made it smaller. The president said, this is the only thing we can get through. Let's do it. So, you know, I mean, how much was enough? That's still continuing. People are still debating that. They're still saying.
One of the questions I was going to ask is, wouldn't you have been better, wouldn't Congress have been better off had they given this stimulus money to the private sector, allowing business to invest and create jobs that would last? But what you're saying is that this was more of a quick fix than we really all want to admit.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, if you read a little, and you know, look, a lot of people were not happy with the bank bailouts, but you start to read that, and I'm talking about reading conservative economists, and they say, had we not done that, the economy would definitely have gone bottom out. These big banks started to fail, and if they did, the economy would be absolutely, you know, destroyed right now. So you can argue that, you know, it wasn't perfect, but it was the only safety net that government could do. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I mean, look, don't forget, under the Bush administration, and I voted for this, we gave a big tax rebate to everybody. What ended up happening? People paid off old bills. People ended up, we used to get, I talk about this all the time, talk about frustration. People went out and bought things. They bought good, you know, consumer goods that were produced in China. You know, so how did we stimulate, you know, I mean, obviously you help local merchants, but how much did we really stimulate the economy? So it's very difficult to feed that money in, and that's part of the problem with any stimulus plan that anyone does. How do you best direct it into the economy in such a way that you really stimulate? And you know, and I hear people on the other side of the aisle saying to me, or saying to in general, well, you know, the stimulus bill was supposed to create 3 million jobs, and we lost 2 million jobs. That doesn't. We created jobs. Just the job loss in the country was larger than we anticipated. So we're still creating them, but jobs are still being lost at the same time. I mean, that's natural.
So is the thought that that we it's not as much of giving the economy the boost that we've been talking about, is really it's keeping the economy going. A, and B, have we kept it going long enough where we're starting to see a turnaround where the market can actually begin to take over?
Well, we see the stock, and that's the $1 million question, or whatever, $800 billion question. You know, that's really the question. I mean, how well is the economy stabilizing? How much will it take off? I mean, we have seen the market really pick up, the stock market really pick up in the past couple weeks. That's I mean, that's not a perfect indicator by any means. And you hear some of the economists say that the jobless rate's gonna continue to hover for a while, but we're seeing the market starting to go. We're starting to see things happen a little bit. We're starting to see some stability. So it looks like we clearly stopped the downward spiral. Right. How quickly we come out of it, that's how people are going to judge it.
The question is, with a lot of that TARP and TALF and the bailout loans, is that people are supposed to pay those back. So some of the banks already have given some of it back, and some of them aren't scheduled to, and Treasury's kind of holding on to it to see if they're going to have to put anything else into it. What happens when that money comes back? What are they going to do with it?
They're supposed to be paying down. The money is supposed to go directly toward paying down the deficit. Paying down
the federal deficit.
The federal deficit, exactly. So the money that we borrowed to put into it, we're supposed to use to pay it back.
And did this stop, like you were talking about county governments and state governments spending stimulus money, did this stop them from making cuts to bureaucracies and consolidating in some districts like they were supposed to? Like, they didn't have to make any of those tough decisions this time around because they got a lot of stimulus money. Here in Oneida County, we got like $19 million worth of Medicaid money. Well, they increased the sales tax so we could pay for Medicaid. Then they used this to fill the caps, never put down the sales tax. So did this stop them from having to make tough decisions that they normally would have had to make?
That's a good question. Clearly, it was stopgap from the federal perspective. Two things. It was, one, to help them get by these hard times without raising taxes, and to do it over a slower period of time, and secondly, to keep the economy going. Now, whether or not they do it, that's their decision to make. But clearly we can't force them to do that from a federal perspective, but they know this is a one-time shot. They certainly should know that.
And the question is, and that's kind of what was my original question, had we given it to the private sector, they seem to at times act a little more responsibly than our bureaucracy.
Well, now, yes and no. I mean, let's not forget that, here we were bailing out these banks, and what did we see them giving $1 million bonuses, right after? And again, I understand they have to pay their senior people. And I hear this from my friends in business. Hey, you can't, but let me give you an example, because I think you'll appreciate this. I was at a town hall meeting in Cortland, and this person started, got up and was, going on and on. You're spending too much on the part of the federal government. Why are you spending so much? Why are you not regulating? The federal government needs to make sure that we're not giving these $1 million bonuses. Goes on and on and on. Right. And I let this person talk because, obviously that's why they were at the town hall meeting. Within a minute, they were still in the same thing. They said, and the other thing you're doing is you're over-regulating business. Will you stop trying to tell business what to do? Well, he had just said you can't have it both ways. You just said, you have to watch out if you're going to give this money that they're not giving these, golden parachutes. And on the other hand, don't overregulate. So how do you find that sweet spot in terms of giving, business the ability to develop and create new jobs, and yet not overregulate them, because we don't want to do that. We're a capitalist society, and we need to maintain that.
And the fact remains, if a bonus has been given out, the company owes it.
Exactly.
It's going to be very difficult to. A lot of these stories that came out were bonuses that were already promised in a part of a contract. I don't know how you go back on that and continue to attract good, talented employees.